Welcome to Inference and Incense, where insight meets intuition when a rational bows to the ritual, and the data always have something to say. We, two data scientists, exploring one big questions each week, taking turns surprising each other with a mystery guest and a live reading. Each week, our questions is equal parts over-analysis and random curiosity. This one starts something like this. All right. Welcome back to Inference and Incense. I guess it's time of the year planning for all the holiday travels. I still can't believe that you convinced me to cancel my trip to Japan July this year just to avoid some prophecy panic manga. Do you remember that?
Yeah, but it's a good thing. And I'd still love to believe that our collective intentions have altered the course of a major human tragedy.
Oh,
'Cause who
come
knows,
on about the collective intentions. This is like ancients' age-old talent for weaponized fear. I mean, think about it. The July 5th, 2025, half of Japan, held its breath? Not because of some crazy earthquake, breaking news, or government alert. It's because of a manga comic strip.
From a credible source, though. Well, for
Hold it.
So for the context, the prediction is from manga artist Ryo Tatsuki, and then the original copy was published back in 1995 or 1999, somewhere around there. It's called A Future I Saw, which collected 15 precognitive dreams she has had. And then it actually didn't become like viral until like after 2020 something. And then she then got the cult status for allegedly predicting the 1995 Kobe earthquake and even the 2011 tsunami. That's huge. So when it got republished with a new cover stating that there is a major earthquake like striking July 5th, 2025, people took it very seriously.
Very seriously, sure. And I think more on the matter that the hotels industry, the entire tourism in Japan took half of a cut, right? You will cancel their vacation, school get postponed. The entire country was panicking. But I think let's hold off on that. I think you would enjoy this statistics. So Japan is obviously experiencing earthquake often, right? They experiencing roughly 2,000 earthquake a year. And within the last 50 years, there are more than 12 major earthquakes in the magnitude of 6 or above. So these are AKA violent earthquakes. So for you to predict major earthquake in Japan is almost like predicting the Starbucks in the next 5 minutes of your drive.
But still all the dates. And then that's how she gained her credibility. And also, she predicted Freddie Mercury's death exactly for the reason of AIDS. That's quite impressive. You have to give her that.
I remember thinking I did hear something about this, but it was kind of like her dream. She soft dated and it was more anecdotal than evidence at best, I think. But I mean, I still think that the magnitude of her prediction and how it shakes the country is so, so crazy that, I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars. We're talking about the entire country was panicking. So I want to talk more about that in this episode with you. So why doesn't prophecy need to be true to shape faith and reality?
Maybe like prophecies, just like Tatsuki, was tapping into something we all sensed, but we couldn't articulate, right? But now thinking back, how I joined this trend was probably very trained. Because, for several months, I was just paying very close attention to the thread and then watched or her like comments like from other YouTubers, and then like it just kept enhancing my brain. So I was like, maybe your brain did exactly what it's designed to do.
All
And then
right.
yeah, let me think for a minute, because like our brain would kind of auto completes the picture you're seeing, right? So in terms of comic books, maybe we're just trained to think about disasters, right? When you see the first panel, it's like there's nobody on the street, and then second panel there's tsunami hitting, things like that. Then right away you are auto completing a disaster thing.
Yeah, I agree with how your brain fills out details, right? It predicts what correlates and it completes your reality. The the very own reality that each of us takes on a daily basis. It's kind of like Netflix for your brain's imagination. Your brain just skipped the trailer. It goes straight to worst case scenario mode. And when that stuff feels scary, it feels closer to your heart. It feels like it's facts. And you just remember a very few predictions going back to Tatsuki that she got right, and the hundreds one that didn't get right, but wasn't very well documented because people don't pay attention to the ones that was not hit, right? That's not prophecy. That's pattern recognitions. I mean, with some major commitment issues, definitely confirmations bias, selective reasoning. Can I go on?
Yeah, buy that for a second. I think that's true for a lot of prophecies who like even today they might have like multiple like Twitter, or we call it X now, like drafts, right? Because they have the timestamp when they're like crafting the prophecies, so we say. But when it happens, then they publish the one is actually correct after the fact. So that makes their accuracy like almost 100%, like the election results, things like that. But still, I would defend for Tatsuki because in her case, it's not just the major disasters, whatever. She's just recording her dreams, right? And the dates, all the things she mentioned, because it happens like in 5 years. It's like 5, 10, 15. Like always in that the five is always showing in her dreams. And then the Fukushima, the earthquake, all of those, it's very like early accurate.
Well, okay. So I think back to like the whole, posting on Twitter X now. That's not prediction. That's post dictions, really. You recalibrated what you said just to match the fact after the maths. Okay. And now back to the Japan and Tatsuki and all of her earthquake predictions. So I think we know Japan is not any stranger to earthquake because the country sits on four tectonic plates and they observe roughly 2,000 or more earthquakes a year, size that you can feel. So, the ground shaking, the building shaking. And I just mentioned earlier, they observed 12 or more major violent earthquake within the last 50 years, the magnitude of 6.9 and above, with major casualty. That's Lucy. That's not really amazing prediction. That's pretty good statistic. So it's no longer throwing a shot in the dark. You get pretty good accuracy if you said within the next 5 years something major is going to happen. Earthquake in Japan.
Yeah, I don't like it when you're so logical. You because you're almost saying that say human beings, the destiny for us is death, right? Then you're predicting death because death is just the probability of 100%. It's going to happen.
It's going to happen exactly. We're all going to die.
You sound too happy about that.
I'm not happy. I'm just happy about the fact that we could agree on a statistic. But, I think here's the thing. I don't think the human being are blinded when they believe in these things. I think emotional fear is a major thing that really getting your brain to work that really hard into overdrive mode. And fear does keep human beings alive. And that's what set us apart, right? We can detect fear. We learn from fear driven patterns to protect and evolve over time. So think our ancestor back in the tribal day, when you see rustling in the grass, the ones who actually fear that and protect them and their tribe, they survive. The one who, you know, looked the other way and didn't think of anything, but maybe, wind, they probably didn't survive because it could be some predators, tigers that coming to attack them. So I think the fear driven predictions have a very deep instinctual connections with the human being.
Wow, so you're saying that's kind of like encoded in our genes, right? Because just the same as fight or flight, that mode is constantly triggering us to respond to our environment. And then, like anything fear related, it just almost triggers the deepest emotion of us. And then we respond to it naturally.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, in that case, in points, right? The one who was fearful of those natural occurrence really hit the evolution lottery, right? They survived, they continued to procreate. So fear was a very incentivizing factor for basic survival. And I think we, therefore, hardwired to see things in patterns. But sometimes we force patterns where they don't exist. And I think this is where scientists call apophenia. And it's the same mechanism behind what conspiracy stories and the same reason why you texted me about this tsunami in Japan at 2 a.m. that day. Forced me to cancel my trip.
First of all, I think I go to bed before midnight, so it's definitely not two. But yeah, let me ask you something though. Is this just neuroscience, deep fear emotions? Or, but if that's true, why certain cases are even supported by certain scientists, right? They're the most scientific people. And then why does prophecy work across every culture? For thousands of years, they just exist no matter how advanced our technology is. And why does it resonate with so many of us?
Well, there's a lot of questions here, but okay, let's go down one by one. So, why does prophecy work? I mean, does it work? I haven't seen a scientific deep dive on it to prove it does work. But basic of a lot of prophecy is that you make enough predictions, you're gonna hit. It's just basic statistic for me. I think it's just the law of the number. But also deep down, once it does hit, people really connect with it on a fear level and they connect with it on a deep emotions level. And I think we all want our life to have meaning. And even when you are part of major historical events that has nothing impacting you personally, and if you're just part of that time period, it means something personal, right? So I think people really take a lot of emotional connections out of prophecy in general. There's a little bit of a randomness, and I think this is where selective memory comes in, selective reasoning, also confirmation bias again. But I mean, look at how far back we go with this kind of prophecy. And not too far back in the ancients, but look at the original Nostradamus, right? The original prophet of our time that people are still looking at his text to this day.
Oh, I love him. I always check back to see what's new in his prediction for for the year, things like that. And I would love to think him as a, I don't know, old-time data scientist. Because to be honest, that's what we do. We just predicting more regular events like, oh, when is this person going to buy this thing next, right? If you think about that, those prophecies are not doing too much different, but they're trying to predict major events.
Well, of course you do love him. The eventual celestial doom is written all over your biography, but what he predicts a few major events.
Yeah, but they're definitely very major, right? Because Nostradamus, He wrote about 1,000 like quatrains in the 50s. And then he's been continuously in print for almost like 500 years. It's still very popular today, and it's all over the place on the internet if you look for it. If you examine his poems, he actually wrote it very vague and never notates any of the things himself. So guess who's doing all the interpretations?
I love when you make the argument for me. Of course, it's a human making these interpretations. And I think the fact that Nostradamus is so popular till this day is that he was brilliantly vague and honestly kind of genius of a marketer, if you think about it. He didn't really make predictions, he made poetic text for testing the entire civilizations and their faith. I think the famous example from his predictions, if I could remember, and this one I like the most to disprove the point, is that he supposedly, allegedly, predicted the 1666 Great Fire of London, right? And the things that he predicts in general is very vague. And I think there's some statistic that there's only 7% hit rate with all of the things that he wrote. But it all eventually will happen, though.
Yeah, but it literally says the blood of the just will be the mountain of London burnt by fire in the year 66. That's very specific, right?
Oh, come on. It is so not specific.
How is it not? They said 66 and London. All the keywords hit.
I know, but Lucy, from the year that he predicts, the year 66 happened many times. It bound to happen eventually. I mean, 1566, 1666, 1966, on and on and on. You see where I'm going. And I mean, blood of the just. There's always a boogeyman somewhere. And I think it's always applied retroactively to any tragedies. It's always vague enough, it's emotional, deep enough, and it allows the interpreter to fit how they see fit.
But that's why we think him as such a great prophecy, right? Because he predicted several major events so accurately, and then we gave it meanings. So I don't think they just negate him as a great prophecy.
Well, I mean, your brain does a lot of the creative writing, though. I think you see, as you said, certain keywords when the moment comes, the human love to make a story out of it. And I think that's just human being at best. We make meaning out of facts and informations, and they mistake that feeling for scientific validation.
You know what? I was thinking now, maybe what he's trying to do, like Nostradamus, he wasn't trying to predict very specific events, but he was trying to recognize the patterns, you know?
Exactly. That I agree. And I think patterns do repeat. History does rhymes, and humans are great at being the repeat offenders, right?
Yeah, but eventually, like science just keep proving what mystics knew all along.
Or vice versa. Mystics are just really good at storytelling patterns and recognizing them in a way that hits emotionally deep.
Yeah, but I guess what we're trying to say is those mystics are actually early form of scientists because we don't have a word for them, right? So they just didn't do, I guess, enough experiments to actually prove it, but they did raise the valid hypothesis.
I don't know. A hit rate of 7% for Nostradamus, I have to say it's a little bit low. And also, it's not prediction when the texts are vague. The interpretations and the event will eventually happen are, dictated by post hoc reality, by human interpretation. But I do see your point where there's a little bit of, I think scientific patterns and maybe they are good at predicting, maybe they're good at mimic pattern recognitions, or maybe it's a little bit of a gimmicks behind it.
Yeah. Let me give you a better example though, because this reminds me of the most famous prophecies in China, like called 推背图. So literally meaning pushing back pictures. And then this is back from 7th century in Tang Dynasty. And then the book is named after a legend where one of the authors, Yuan Tiangang, a seer, you may say, and pushed his colleague Li Chunfeng's back to stop them from revealing too many prophecies. And then the book itself consists of 60 prophecies, which have been interpreted as foretelling major historical events.
Yeah, but let me guess, it does the same kind of predictions, quote unquote, things that kind of already happened, vaguely depicted, right?
No, I think you're too cynical about this one. They actually got a way higher hit rate. The prediction still continues. So let me give you a very specific example. That's probably one of the most famous one. It's an image, I think image 2 or 3 in the book. And to illustrate a plate with the 21 plums. So in Chinese, the plum is actually called a li zi. So li itself is phonetically same as li. So the family name of the Tang imperial dynasty. And this dynasty had 21 emperors. And the fourth was actually the very first empress in history, Wu Zetian. So guess what's in the image? So the image shows the fourth plum has no stem. It's clearly symbolized that it's different from the others, right?
I mean, symbolizing. Okay, I do agree with that keyword, but sure, continue.
Yeah. Then from this, they predicted all the major events, like the fall of the dynasties, the Japanese invasion during the World War II, the Communist Revolution, and Hong Kong handover in 1997. I mean, they predicted like hundreds of years after.
Okay, I don't know about what too big two, so I can't really make a well-informed, evidence-packed argument here. But Lucy, come on, the fourth plum with no stem, that's a major coincidence. You're just waiting for the next big dynasty with 21 family members and the fourth one being a broken one. And you can say that the picture predicted that. That's a waiting for eventuality to happen. So same mechanism for Nostradamus, right? Vague but specific, detail heavy imagery or poems or text or quatrain, whatever that is, and it allowed for interpretation to take its course way after the event occurred. And you find enough similarity, and it's like a big hit. And it's kind of like the snake eating its own tail element. And all of these internal chaos, big event, big family, big name, the boogeyman, whenever these major events happen that seem correlate or matching whatever the artist depictions hundreds of years back, it seems like treasure found. But I think the treasure was so vague to begin with. It eventually will be found.
First of all, I will see if I can get a copy for you as a Christmas gift to birthday by two. So
Okay,
you really
let's
see the
do
power
it.
of it. Because I think the other side is kind of like what you said. It's an emotional side of it. Because once people start resonating with several pictures or predictions from the book, then later when I read other prediction, they started making sense of them themselves, right? So as long as there's something meaningful happening for them, and then they build that connection, I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
No, no, there's nothing wrong with it. And I think that's where it's interesting, right? With across generation, time, space, and culture. There's a lot of similar prophecy and historical prophet that seems really to make it to the highest of fame. So there is something that really hitting human core and really struck a note deep within our heart. And it's not based on major discovery or hard evidence. So I think it is an interesting part for sure.
Yeah. What's intriguing to me is that I see a cultural difference between like Western and Eastern prophecies. Because if you read all the like Western ones, it's a lot of times they're biblical and they're religious related. And what like resonates with people most is all those apocalypse. It's those endings, judgment, doomsday. While if I look at Eastern ones, it's more about cycles. I think it might be more related to the influence from Buddhism or Taoism, because the cyclical nature of the human race, and that's a rise, the fall, the renewal, and the repeat.
Mm, that's an interesting observation. It's very astute. I love it. And I think, as I said, I think that humans across time, space, and culture, we all need explanations to make meanings out of life, right? To create a narrative out of chaos. That's how we continue to evolve emotionally. And prophecy is a great means to an end. It does provide that belonging. It gives you a coherent story, an explanation why things happen, why chaos happened. So the reality doesn't feel so violent, so random. And I think that random factor is a much more difficult of a state for people to accept.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Maybe the way we're reading those prophecies, like maybe it's not meant to be taken literally. Maybe they're trying to teach us the nature of impermanence, like nothing stays as status quo. And it's not about fortune telling, and then more of reminding us there's a pattern.
I do like that. Yeah, and I think that's where I do love the Eastern cultures and religions. And a lot of the meanings behind Eastern philosophy is around the cycle. So there's a lot of goodness for us to pause and reflect. All right, that's it, everyone.